السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد. So today, inshallah, we'll endeavor to finish the explanation of the hadith that we began yesterday, wherein Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiyallahu anhu, that he wrote to Mughira ibn Shu'bah, asking him to write down and to send him in writing that which he had heard from Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Warrad, who was the scribe of Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu anhu, that he said that Al-Mughira dictated to him and he wrote it down. And what he wrote was that indeed I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbid asking too many questions, squandering of wealth, and the carrying of tales, meaning rumor mongering or scandal mongering. Qil wa qal, gossip and tale carrying. So we already covered the first part of this hadith, because the hadith of course is in three sections. The first one that we covered yesterday was asking too many questions. Today let's talk about the second one, and that is ida'at al-mal. As he mentioned that he forbade yanha an ida'at al-mal. He forbade from the squandering or the wastage of wealth. Shaykh Zayd Rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions this and he says that this is al-amru thani, that this is the second affair that is mentioned in this hadith, and that is the prohibition of squandering wealth. And it is obligatory to know for all of us that the wealth is the wealth of Allah Azza wa Jal. He is the one who grants it to whomsoever He wills from His servants. With it, and it can be, meaning this grant of wealth, Allah can give it to a person who is righteous, and also to a person who is wretched and wicked. And if a person possesses a large amount of wealth, then that is not proof of his piety or that he is upon that which is correct. So this is not indicative of the fact that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants a person wealth, it's not a proof of his piety, and nor is it a proof of his corruption either. That just because Allah has given this type of wealth, or that a person possesses this wealth, does not prove that he's righteous, and it doesn't prove that he is upon corruption. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants his wealth and he gives the wealth in accordance to the wisdom of Allah. Whomsoever he wishes from his servants, he will give them an expansive sustenance, and whomsoever he wills, that he'll give them a restricted and a constricted sustenance. And whomsoever Allah wills, Allah will give them that which is in between the two, meaning neither will Allah give them a large amount of wealth nor a small amount of wealth, but rather in between the two. And all of this is from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is the one who apportions His wealth and His sustenance between the servants. He is the one who divides it and apportions it and gives it and divides it between his servants. And for this reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he rebuked the kuffar, those who turned away from the messengership or the prophethood of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أهم يقسمون رحمة ربك نحن قسمنا بينهم عيشتهم في الحياة الدنيا ورفعنا بعضهم فوق بعض درجات ليتخذ بعضهم بعضا سخريا وَرَحْمَةُ رَبِّكَ خَيْرٌ مِّمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, is it they who portion out the mercy of your Lord, O Muhammad? Rather, it is us who portion out their livelihood between them in this world. And we raise some of them above others in rank, so they may employ others for their labor. But the mercy of your Lord is better than the wealth that they amass. So it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who spreads out and grants his sustenance and his provision to whomsoever he wills, and he apportions it upon the one that he wills to apportion it to. So it is obligatory for us to be pleased and happy with the division of Allah and that which Allah has apportioned for you. And having jealousy and envy of others, then this is not permissible. Meaning that it is not permissible for a poor person to have jealousy for the rich person. This is not from the manners of a Muslim, that he is jealous of someone who has more than him, who is more wealthy than him. And maybe a person may blame the wealthy one and think to himself that he is not deserving, I am more deserving. This is not the attitude of a righteous person. He doesn't look at others and wish to have their possessions, or he feels envious that they have something and he doesn't have that thing. This is not from the manners of a Muslim. Ever, barakallahu feekum, never should that even cross your mind when you see someone with some wealth or some possession. Never should it cross your mind that he is not deserving and you are more deserving. Barakallahu feekum. Don't ever feel like that, and you should never imagine that to yourselves, because to do so is to contend with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the worldly affairs to whom he loves, and he may give it to whom he does not love, because that is the dunya, and the dunya is like that Allah may give it to whom he loves, and Allah may give it to whom he does not love. But as for the religion, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only gives it to the one that he loves from his servants, whether male or female. So that's the difference. The fact that you are a person who practices and worships Allah and follows the Sunnah and establishes the Tawheed of Allah and makes sajda on the ground 5 times a day and more, for those who seek even more nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah only gives that hidayah and that goodness to whom he loves. Whereas wealth and status and rank, meaning fame and so on, then Allah can give that to whom he loves, and Allah can give that to whom he does not love. Indeed, some of the people who are the wealthiest are the most despicable in the sight of the Sharia, in the sight of Islam. And this is something that you know, so therefore don't be jealous and don't be envious of those who have something that you don't have. Be grateful of the fact that Allah has given you Islam and has honored you with Islam, so you can walk with pride and honor, with your head high and your heart filled with joy that Allah has given you the wealth of Islam and the treasure of Al-Islam. Naam, so this wealth that Allah has given, which Allah has given to whomsoever Allah wills from His servants, then it is not permissible to squander that wealth or to waste that wealth. So Allah has given it to whom He wills, and you might be from them, whether it is a small amount of wealth or a large amount of wealth. That which Allah has given belongs to Allah. So it is not permissible for anyone to squander that wealth by spending it in a manner that is haram, or even obtaining it in a manner that is haram. Whether it be in the way of dealings that are haram, meaning that your transactions which are haram, it is not permissible to spend or to gain wealth in haram dealings and transactions, or through trickery, or by theft, or pillaging, or embezzlement and fraud, or coercion, or by dealing in riba, or anything other than that from those affairs and those means of spending and earning wealth that you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. It is not permissible, and that wealth is not good wealth, because it is earned and it is obtained or spent in a manner that Allah is not pleased with. So all of these means in getting hold of that wealth and acquiring that wealth, then this is transgression against your own self if you were to do that. And that person who earns his wealth in a manner that is prohibited and haram, and Allah is not pleased with, then he has brought himself and brought upon himself the anger of Allah and the punishment of Allah, and that will occur to him sooner, meaning in this life, and in the akhirah. That he will receive the recompense of haram earnings in this life. He will see it in his children. He will see it in his health. He will see it in his property. He will see it in his companionship. He will notice it in the depths of his heart, in his depression and suffering and sadness and anxiety. Why? Because wealth that is earned in that manner and obtained in that manner will not give a person joy. That's why you find a lot of these, from the wealthiest of the people of the world, that they are in utter depression and sadness. And they feel it in the depths of their hearts, because no matter what kind of wealth that they obtain, if it is not obtained in a manner that is lawful and pleasing to Allah, then it will not bring them joy. It may bring them joy for a short term. It may bring them joy and happiness because they jump from one type of high to the next, or one form of excitement to the next form of excitement, and they're never pleased. And in the akhirah, in their graves and in the hereafter, for those who stole and usurped other people's wealth, or they dealt in riba and usury. So therefore, it is not to be acquired except in a manner that is halal. And that is not to say that there is any harm in a Muslim being wealthy. There is no harm in that. In having wealth that Allah has blessed a person with, there is no harm in having wealth, as long as he knows that he has to spend the right of Allah from that wealth, meaning that he pays zakat upon it and whatever else is necessary on his wealth. So he may give sadaqah from it. He feeds the indigent and the poor. When he sees an orphan, he helps him. If his family members need him, he gives it to them. his mother, his father, his brothers, his sisters, his relatives. He doesn't pass by a poor person and think to himself, I made it, so he can go and make it. Rather, he helps those who are in need. So he gives the wealth its rights. And he leaves it, meaning after his death, he leaves it to his children in inheritance, because that is their haqq by the book of Allah, and that is not permissible to be violated. And likewise that he gives something to the poor or to a masjid as a wasiyah. So all of these are from the rights upon his wealth. All of these are from the rights of his wealth. Some of them are obligated and some of them are emphasized and recommended. But the point is that the right cannot be denied. You cannot take the right of Allah and you cannot take the rights of the people. The people must be given what they deserve. Zakat, for example. Inheritance, for example. Inheritance that is left to your wife or to your children or to your brothers and so on, or to your parents even. And likewise that the wealth must be spent. So now we've spoken about the earning of the wealth. Halal, halalun tayyib, pure earned wealth. And likewise its spending as also, that one does not transgress the limits from the halal into the haram, as is practiced by those who have little fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't have taqwa of Allah, they don't have khawf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they spend their wealth in a manner that is haram. Like those who consume that which is haram, such as the drinking of wine, taking alcoholic drinks, and mukhaddarat, or taking drugs, or spending their wealth on that which is not halal for them, and spending their wealth in a haram manner is haram and it is sinful. And we could go through a list of things that people spend their money upon, and it is haram. Music, women, drugs, drink, haram clothing, haram food. So therefore the wealth that you possess is the wealth of Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, وَآتُوهُمْ مِنْ مَالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي أَتَاكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, and give them from the wealth of Allah that which Allah gave you. So whose is the wealth? The wealth is the wealth of Allah, as Allah has mentioned here in this ayah. And give to them from the wealth of Allah, because that which you possess is the wealth of Allah, that which He gave you. And likewise, وَأَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا جَعَلَكُمْ مُسْتَخْلَفِينَ فِيهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, and spend of that over which Allah has made you trustees. And spend of that over which Allah has made you trustees. Meaning that the person of wealth has been entrusted with the wealth. So he knows that he knows the right of Allah in that wealth, and how to behave with that wealth. So, na'am. So therefore, if a servant is asked, and a servant will be asked regarding his lifespan, regarding his age, meaning his old age, and regarding his youth, Yawm al-Qiyamah, he will be asked about how he spent his youth before his old age, and how he acted, how he, when he was healthy before his sickness and so on. And he will be asked about his wealth. But the difference with the question about his wealth is that in all of the others, He's asked a singular question, but with regard to his wealth, there are two questions. So Allah will ask him on Yawm al-Qiyamah how he earned it and where he spent it. And this is proof of the seriousness of this affair. This affair is a serious affair, the affair of wealth. And this danger, meaning the danger of wealth and these two affairs of wealth, that they are avoided by two ways. The first is in the manner that the wealth is earned, and it is obligatory that the wealth is earned in only by halal means, or by only halal means, and it cannot be obtained in any haram manner, nor in a doubtful manner. There should be no question mark over the wealth that you possess. Is it halal? Is it haram? Well, I don't know. No, you should know. Your wealth and your earnings must be halal, because Allah will not accept wealth that is halal and pure. What you are selling is halal and it is permissible for you to sell. What you are buying is halal, it is permissible for you to buy. There should be no doubt in that manner, in that matter. And it shouldn't be like some of the people, they say, well, it's okay to sell haram to the kuffar. It is not halal to sell wine and whiskey to the kuffar, because the kuffar, they drink it, so I'll sell it to them, but I won't sell it to a Muslim. Haram. Not halal. It is not permissible for you to sell cigarettes, because cigarettes kill people and they are haram. It is not permissible for you even to sell something that is halal in its asal, knowing that the person will use it in a haram manner. Like, for example, that you sell grapes to a wine merchant, that you know that he's going to turn those grapes into wine. These kind of things you have to be aware of. The second affair, so that is the affair of earning the wealth. That it should be earned in a halal. Secondly, that it should be spent in a halal manner, in that which is obligatory, in that which is recommended, in that which is allowed, so that there is no sin that can enter into the manner in which you spend that wealth. That which is obligatory to spend upon from the wealth is to spend it upon oneself, and to spend it upon those that you are in charge of, such as your wife, your children, and so on, your parents, and those that are connected to you. And it is obligatory to pay them this nafaqah, or to maintain them with your wealth. And it amazes me sometimes that you find that a husband will not spend on his wife, or upon his household, or upon his children, or upon his mother, or upon his father, but he will quite willingly spend his wealth upon designer clothes for himself, or that nice phone for himself, or he'll be driving a nice car, yet his children he doesn't want to spend upon their education, or upon their clothing, or upon the bills in the house. This is not good, my brothers and sisters. Barakallahu feekum. A man should be a man in his home, spend upon his wife, spend upon his children, and he should take pleasure in that, spending upon himself. And from the best of the wealth that you can spend is upon your parents. Every penny and every amount that you spend upon your parents is wealth that is spent in a goodly manner. So a person also must fulfill the rights of the Sharia in his wealth, meaning that if there's a kafara to be paid, an expiation to be paid from his wealth, he should pay it. Like, for example, the person who spends or gives a kafara for dhihar. This is a statement that a man makes, for example, with regard to his wife, that you are like the back of my mother. So he describes her with a term that the Sharia does not allow. So in that sense, he has to free a slave, or fast 2 months consecutively, or that he feeds 60 poor people. So that is wealth that he has to spend upon kafara. Or if he breaks an oath, so he has to feed or clothe people or free a slave. Barakallahu feekum. And other than that, and likewise the paying of, using the wealth to fulfill a vow that he made, another, or to pay zakat. So when he fulfills all of these duties upon his wealth, then he is free from blame. Na'am. And this is different to the one who abuses the wealth that Allah has given him. So he spends his wealth upon that which the Sharia does not approve of and does not affirm. So he wastes his money and spends his money in a manner that is useless, and whilst his own family members, his children or his mother and father are suffering, or that the poor are suffering, he's wasting wealth. As you find those people who set up banquets in Ramadan in their houses and half of the food goes into the bin because their eyes are bigger than their stomachs and their desire is bigger than what their stomach can fill. Wallahu musta'an. So such people are not safe from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Either they will receive it sooner, meaning in this world, or at a later stage in the hereafter. For this reason the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he forbade the squandering and the wasting of wealth. Barakallahu feekum. And finally, and I'll try and quickly get through the last point inshaAllah, and that is that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he forbade from qeel wa qaal, from he said and she said. And this is basically gossip mongering, something that is commonplace in our times. In fact, the whole concept of some parts of social media are built upon qeel wa qaal, just narrating what he did and she did, and what fulan did and what fulan did. And you find the newspapers filled with this, magazines filled with this, generations raised upon that. So it is no wonder that this is now brought into families. So just like people speak about, sinful people speak about the film stars or what the latest footballer is wearing or drinking or visiting and who is cavorting with and so on. They will speak about their own relatives like that. Why? Because that which is distant from you becomes close to you. So they say about royal, so-called royal family or royalty and people of importance in society, then it becomes an affair which enters right into the depths of their homes. So then they start speaking about relatives, aunties, uncles, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews. Why? Because that which you're raised upon, it will enter upon you in your homes up until you become the victim. So how do you prevent that? Don't enter into it, and don't entertain it, and don't waste your life with it. So the speech of a person, or speech that emanates from a person who is held responsible by Allah, then it is not, then his speech that emanates from him, meaning that which he speaks with, is not free of being in one of two states. Either what he says is in his favor in this life and in the hereafter, or it is against him. Meaning that the speech that emanates from the one whom Allah will hold responsible, because he is adult and he is sane and he knows what he's saying, either what he says will be written in his scrolls of good deeds Yawm al-Qiyamah, or it will go against him. Where will it be written? In his good deeds or his evil deeds? So if it is written in his good deeds or her good deeds, then this is like the dhikr of Allah, and that which follows on from the dhikr of Allah, with that which he utters with his tongue, and that which follows on from dhikr. There are many things that are connected to dhikr and remembrance. that which has no limit to it in reality, such as enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, and giving good advice, sincere advice, and advising people with khair, and directing the one who is misguided, and teaching the one who seeks to be taught, and to point the people in the right direction towards that which is good. So all of these, and all of them, and from them is dhikr, and from them is that which is related to dhikr, and that which follows on from dhikr, and being reminded and remembering Allah. So that's one type of speech, that which benefits. So one who listens is benefiting from what you're saying, and the one that you are listening to, you benefit from their speech. Or there is a type of speech that can go against you, my brothers, my sisters, young and old. Or there is the type of speech that will come from your mouth that will go against you, and it will be a cause of your regret Yawm al-Qiyamah, just as the Prophet ﷺ, that a person may utter from his mouth, from his tongue, that which he considers to be insignificant, but it will drop him in the hellfire, the distance between the east and the west, or in a narration, the distance between the heavens and the earth. Imagine you don't even consider what you've said to be of any worth. Oh, it was nothing. Oh, I didn't really say anything. But in the sight of Allah, it is tremendous, like the distance between the heavens and the earth in the hellfire. Wal-iyadhu billah. And remember, once you say something, it cannot be unsaid. If you said it in a group, you can wish that you never said it, but you cannot unsay it. If you say something to your wife, it cannot be unsaid. It has been said. Then what is there after that then? Nothing but regret. I wish I didn't say it. Oh, if only, if only, if only. There's no if only now. It's done. So watch what you say, who you speak about, and how many times, you know, I've come across people who have said something and they said, if only I didn't say it, ya akhi. I said something to my mother, or I said something to my father, or I said something to my daughter, or I said something to my husband, or something to my wife, and I wish I hadn't said it. Too late, akhi. Too late, ukhti. It's too late. Now what remains is regret and sorrow and sorry. But if a person was to think before they spoke, then be no need for the regret afterwards. Ask yourself the question before you speak: is this going to benefit me or harm me in the sight of Allah? Is this going to benefit the one who receives what I've got to say and hears what I've got to say, or is it not going to benefit them? If it's not going to benefit them, even if it is the haqq, you say, well, it wasn't an untruth. Sufficient is it for a person to be a liar that he narrates everything that he hears? O kama qala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Don't narrate it just because you heard it. Don't narrate it just because Fulan said it. You should need to be hakim, you need to be wise, and you need to be deliberate in what you say. Deliberate over what you say and be deliberate in what you say. This is the problem in this age of social media, this age of the WhatsApp, and the age of the WhatsApp screenshot, and the Twitter, and what you put on your Facebook account. All of these types of wasa'il and means of putting yourself out there that may bring regret to you in years to come. So withhold, barakallahu feekum. No one needs to hear what you've got to say. Keep yourself to yourself. Be khamil. Remain anonymous. That is better for you. Being famous and being known. I've got so many followers on Twitter. I'm in so many groups on WhatsApp. Why? Why does that need to be your goal in life? To be heard and to be known? Do you have ilm to disseminate? Are you an alima or an alim? Are you a talib ilm even? Are you even a person of, a seeker of knowledge, a student of knowledge? What do you have to disseminate that the whole ummah must stop and read what you've got to say and hear what you've got to say? It's a musibah, subhanallah. Allahu musta'an. So what you say can go against you. Can go against you from the speech of the tongue that is haram. And that is a great danger. And from the worst of them, of course, is words of kufr and shirk and statements of hypocrisy or zandaqa, heresy and bid'ah that may emanate from a person and he does not consider their weightiness. And likewise ghiba and backbiting and namima, scandal mongering and rumour mongering and tale carrying and kadhib and lying and slandering the people, or just babbling, meaning just speaking and gossiping, and there's no fa'idah in what you're saying. It doesn't bring about any benefit except maybe sin. Therefore it is obligatory upon a person to watch his tongue and to watch what he says precisely. So, na'am. And this is for the one who wishes to free his soul from the evils of the tongue and what harvest of evil that can bring in. And the Salaf of this ummah and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they used to know this. And there is that statement from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu who said, there is nothing that has more right to be imprisoned than the tongue. As has been reported by Ibn Mubarak in his Az-Zuhd, Al-Waqi', Ibn al-Jarrah in Az-Zuhd also, Ibn Abi Shaybah in his Musannaf, Imam Ahmad in his Zuhd, and many other scholars in their books on Az-Zuhd, on being abstemious, meaning people who are not concerned with the dunya but they are concerned with their akhirah. Meaning, when Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said that there is nothing that has more right to be imprisoned than the tongue, meaning, na'am, so he does not speak that he should be imprisoned, such that he does not speak except with good. Meaning, go ahead and speak with what you want to speak with, but only speak good. Otherwise remain silent, as the Prophet ﷺ said. If you have nothing good to say, then just remain silent. So speak with khair. Use your voice and your tongue to recite the Quran and to recite knowledge, hadith, to give sincere advice, such as enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. Or speak with speech that is mubah, meaning that it can be outside of the religion, but it is speech that is allowable. For example, about food and health and the beauty of Allah's creation and the niceness and the gratitude that you have maybe towards your husband, or the husband towards his wife, or the children towards their parents, or the grandchildren towards their grandparents, and so on, aunts and uncles. Speech that is mubah, that is allowable, and there is nothing in it that is haram. Na'am. So there is only an intent in that speech that is good speech with the people, and to speak to the people at their level. Then all of this will bring to the person reward, so that this limb, or this piece of flesh, the lisan, the tongue, that it is not used except for that for which Allah created it for. And we have already mentioned, and then the Shaykh repeats some of those, the best of the acts of worship. Rather, he mentions here, which is a point actually that has not been mentioned before, and the best of the acts of worship are not correct unless they are accompanied with speech of the tongue, and that which the Sharia commands with. So look at the prayer, for example, that the tongue, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it so that it utters speech without which your prayer would not be correct. How many rukun, how many pillars of the prayer there are that are not correct, except that it is with what you say upon the tongue, like Surah Al-Fatiha and other than that. And that which is wajib in the prayer, and that which is mustahab in the prayer, that which is obligatory and that which is recommended in the prayer, all of this is upon the tongue, because that is the purpose for which Allah created your tongue. So all of these are from the fruits or from the good deeds of the tongue. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed or given the ability for people, and it's the bounty from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they use their tongue in a good manner and to keep away from that which you have mentioned previously, from evil speech such as shirk and kufr, statements of hypocrisy, ingratitude towards Allah, transgressing the bounds against the people with your speech, using foul language, being rude to your parents, with namima, with ghiba, with kadhib, with false witness and so on. All of these is to use the tongue in a manner that is not good, and it will cause you regret. Or to use the tongue just to make the people laugh. You're like some of the people that they just clown around. And likewise, to use the tongue to lie, to make people laugh, and other than that. So therefore it is obligatory to control one's speech and to think about what you say. Barakallahu feekum, and upon that note, inshallah, we'll conclude. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to that which is pleasing to Him and keep us upon straight guidance. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.